Hello and good morning to everyone out there in the world. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Solon.
Good morning, Dr. Cheney.
Good morning.
And good morning, Mr. Bolds.
Good morning, everyone.
First, I want to thank everyone again for viewing, subscribing, for the comments that you send in. Thank you for all the love and support. There's not another show, at least that I know of, where we discuss live cases. These are kind of like what you see on the Judge Judy, except these are more involved and we don't know the outcome of these situations yet. So thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and keep those comments coming in. Today, to begin, I have something already prepared, so I'm not going to type, but I want to share this. We've talked about it before, but I want to get into it again. Parental kidnapping. Parental kidnapping. No parent, and you can see here, or any person acting pursuant to directions from the parent. That means a parent can't tell her brother, her son, his aunt, anyone to intentionally conceal a child from the other parent. Some people may not know that. You cannot take your child, or tell someone to take your child and intentionally conceal that child from the other parent. No relative or any person may abduct, take, or carry away a child with the intent to prevent a lawful custodian from exercising rights to custody of the child. So if you share a child with someone, you must allow that other parent to know where you're going and what your intentions are. The act goes on to say that no relative, having obtained actual physical control of a child, shall keep the child for more than 48 hours after a lawful custodian demands that the child be returned. That's parental kidnapping. And it's an unfortunate situation when one parent feels that they have the authority to withhold their child from the other parent. What would make a parent think they can do that? In our case today, let me tell you all about the case today. We had an all-day trial this week, and Mr. Bolds was part of this trial, and this was more impromptu. We had a police officer lined up for today, but we asked Mr. Bolds to come on today because, one, the hearing was an extraordinary hearing. I wish we could have recorded that hearing and showed the audience today. And two, the situation is sad, what he's been going through. We talk about injustice, and John will talk more about that at the end. But you talk about it, an injustice, and we're hoping for the best. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Bolds now so he can walk us through how he found himself in this position. Welcome again, Mr. Bolds.
Thank you very much for having me, and hello to everyone on the panel.
Okay, tell us where you're from right now. Where are you living right now?
Okay, my name is Malachi Bolds. I'm born and raised here in Charleston, South Carolina. I've lived in Charleston, South Carolina for the most part of my life. I lived in DC for about 3 years, and then I relocated back to Charleston, South Carolina.
All right, so you were married in South Carolina, and you had a child with your wife.
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell us what happened.
Okay, so we got married in 2008 in Rock Hill, South Carolina. We moved from Rock Hill, South Carolina to Charleston, South Carolina, into a home that is owned by my mother family. And during that time, I participated in the first time homeowners program with Trident Urban League. And it was a year-long process. I had to work on my credit and different things of that nature. I asked my then spouse to participate. She did not want to participate. So we eventually moved on the peninsula of Charleston. And, we had some, I guess, some differences with parenting because we had a blended family. I brought my my daughter Brittany Denise Bowles from a previous high school relationship, and she brought her two children from her previous relationships, and we tried to create a blended family situation. And in doing that, naturally kids are going to be somewhat rebellious because most kids want to have that interaction with their real biological parents, which I understood and I was sensitive to because I have a daughter.
Now tell us about that. You had a daughter because Brittany was part of the trial this week.
Yes, she was.
Now tell us your relationship with your daughter before you got married and even during the time you were married.
Well, I thank God for my firstborn daughter, Brittany Denise Bowles. She's definitely a great girl. Her mother is a great mother, and we've been able to co-parent her. And the result of that co-parenting is that my daughter is now a senior at South Carolina State University, majoring in speech pathology, where her mother and I both matriculated. So that is just an example of co-parenting with strong parental influence from her mother and from her father biologically. And even though we didn't marry, we still have a very, very good relationship because we started off in high school. And, sometimes those relationships don't always make it, but we still had a very good foundation for our daughter. And those values have always been instilled in all of the children. And even though I had two children that weren't biologically mine, I still afforded them the same principles that my mother and father and grandparents tried to instill in me, and the things that I learned from the principals and coaches who were the village that raised me.
Okay, so you mentioned your wife then had two children prior.
Yes, sir.
How old were they when you all got married?
Okay, so I believe the young man boy was 14, 15, and the young girl was about 14. They have 1 year difference in their ages.
Okay, and your wife, ex-wife, she brought the son as a witness for her.
Yes, sir, she did.
All right, so go ahead with your relationship with your wife now. Now you all get married and you all have a son or a daughter?
We have a son, Malachi Enoch Bolds II.
Okay, and what's going on? What happens?
Well, I've to this day, I guess I'll always, have a place in my heart for her. But basically, I believe that the true issues were the culture of parenting, how ultimately she was brought up in her home and how I was brought up in my home. My parents stayed together. My father was never abusive to my mother. None of the women in my family were ever abused by their husbands, and they stayed married to their husbands. And we have a very Christian-based foundation, and I'm very faith-based. So we began to clash sometimes with parenting because I tried to tell her that, I had a basic rule for the kids in terms of what they needed to do when they came home from school. And that was, when you get home from school, make sure you give 15 minutes to all of your core subjects. First, go ahead and get yourself a snack, whatever it is that you want to eat, sandwich, whatever, leftovers, whatever's in there, you get it. And after you do that, you give 15 minutes to science, to math, to English, and to social studies. And even if you don't read everything, just read the glossary terms in the back. And by doing that, that should help you at least get a 70 on any exam that you take. And those were the basic precepts that I have for all of my children, because I felt that if you give at least an hour to your homework after school, it will show off when you get back in class. Well, we clashed on those things. And when I tried to bring in her son into the family, there's some basic principles that have been instilled in me since a young fella. And that's, as a young male, you're going to take out the trash. You're going to maintain the outside of the home in terms of the gardening and pruning of the bushes and things of that nature, and raking the yard. And he naturally did not want to participate in that. I mean, he literally bucked as if, you're the man of the house, so you're supposed to rake and you're supposed to clean. Yeah, I do that. But the way I was raised, my grandfathers and fathers, they made sure that we knew how to change tires. We knew how to check oil. We knew how to do the basic necessities that you need in order to maintain a home. So that's why I never had any fear of hurricanes or any inclement weathers and things of that nature, because my fathers and grandfathers and uncles had trained my brother and I how to be men. And so
So, so after that, tell me about when Malachi was born.
yes, sir. When Malachi was born, I mean, our family, we were very, very happy. Everybody was together. We did things together. We went to church regularly. We had family dinner nights. I would cook dinner all the time. My ex-wife would cook. We had a system where if I grilled ribs and chicken, she would make the sauce. And we had a really, really good thing going. And then we were incorporated into our churches, into our communities. We would have family nights every Friday at a different friend's house, because the majority of the friends that I have today, I've had those friends since I was in middle school. Okay. And the majority of my really, really core friends, these are the guys that were my best men in my wedding. They're all college educated. They're all married to their wives, and they all have children, with the exception of one of my friends. And so I'm a very family oriented person. My friends are very family oriented. We try to merge the families together, but because I had a blended family, there were some issues that did arise in terms of parenting. I gave my son one spanking for trying to put his hands into the electrical sockets. My then wife, she kept footage of that response for 9 years, and she submitted that to the court, as you saw. And that was the only spanking that I'd ever given my son. And let me remind you, I don't believe in whippings, and I don't believe in beating children. Me being a Southerner, I understand where that whole practice comes from. And so I don't agree with beating on children, because you beat out the spontaneous, adventurous attitude of them. You don't want your child to be intimidated. You want them to feel confident. You want them to feel nurtured and loved. But my fathers and grandfathers always, if I did something wrong, I was going to have to face, a spanking.
So
Bible.
in 2018 now, what happens in 2018? Your son is around 9.
Okay. Yes, sir. So in 2018, the latter part of July, my ex tells me that, Malachi is going to spend some time with my family and her family. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And he'll be back.
And
So
where's her family?
her family is from Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Her entire family.
So the plan was to allow your son to go to Washington, D.C. to spend some time with your family, because your brother lives in Washington, D.C.
Yes, sir. My brother, my sister, several of my family members migrated to DC, and they live good lives in DC, and they prefer to spend their lives in DC, and that's where the majority of the family lives. So I agreed to allow him to do that. The problem came when she and her girlfriends and her sister had already premeditated that they were never going to return my son to South Carolina. And subsequently, the following week, which was the very first week of August, August 7th, I believe it is, 2018, I had just gotten myself back to the point where I could return to work, because I had 2 acute cervical dysfusions during in May of 2018, and then I had another emergency surgery here on my neck in the first week of, I'm sorry, the last week of June 2018. So after physical therapy, and I was finally allowed to come back to work because I ran out of FMLA. When I returned home, the entire house had been vacated, had been abandoned, and I mean, I was devastated. I was shocked. I just couldn't believe that that she could do that. That to me, knowing the type of man I am, the type of father I am, and how much I love my child, and the fact that I had already provided a home, a beautiful home. He had his own room. He had a big backyard. He was blooming at the school that he went to. He went to Charleston Developmental Academy, which was a small school, and he was just doing very, very well. The teachers loved him, and I thought we had a good thing going. We were in our church, and it just came from out of nowhere. And so when
you had no idea she was planning this.
No, sir. No, sir. I had no idea that she was planning it.
Yeah. And just to let the audience know, when we had the hearing this week, she doesn't deny it. She says, yes, I was planning it. Yes, I was keeping it away from him. And the whole plan was for us to move to DC without his knowledge. Go ahead.
That to me is just wicked. It's I don't understand how she could conceive that and keep that inside of herself. And knowing how much I love all of my children, even her children, even the children that I've worked with. I've worked with the Department of Mental Health for 13 years. And I've also worked at MUSC as well, at the Institute of Psychiatry. And even when I was in DC, when I was in Maryland, I'm sorry, I worked for the city of Hyattsville. I ran a program at Magruder Park for aftercare children. And I also worked at the city of Hyattsville Elementary School where I met her. So I've always been involved in my community. I've always been involved with children. I even loved her son and her daughter as if they were my own, and afforded her daughter much more affection, because the situation with my daughter, she would come every first and third week of the month. And so I gave her a lot of attention because of that, missing my own biological daughter. But God works everything out, because the relationship with my daughter got even stronger. And her mother, she understood the importance of allowing me to be in her life. And you can see, when you speak to her, or when you see how much she's done as, as an African-American female, she's really, really soaring, and I'm proud of her. And that is just common in my family.
She is an amazing person. But tell us, so you come home and you see the house abandoned and your son's gone. What's the first thing that you do?
I call her like, what's going on? And she just would not answer the phone for like a week and a half, 2 weeks almost. And then she finally comes and says, she finally picks up the phone and says that, she said, yeah, I'm in DC. We in DC. I'm not coming back. I said, you need to come back. I said, I want you to come back. I want you to bring my son back. There's no way I'm bringing all this stuff back down to South Carolina. And so my world was, I was really, I'm still devastated. I mean, I know, had it not been for the Lord and the grace and the prayers and the village that raised me, it literally broke me, because I was already struggling with my own physical ailments from my surgery. I had lost my father a year before, and just trying to work 2 jobs, trying to keep my family together, trying to love my wife. It was just devastating. It still is today. It really is, still is today. I'm holding back my emotion, because I just can't believe that she would devise a plan with her girlfriends and her sister to tear up our family. I just don't understand it.
So that was in 2018, August, and we just had the hearing last week. So it's practically 3 years to date. So what did you do during those times? What could you do?
I utilize as much as possible the family resources. Like I said, I have very strong women in my family. They're all educated as well as the men. My mother, my aunts, my sister, and my daughter all pleaded on my behalf to my ex and to her family to allow us more time. And she denied it. I mean, she gave me as minimal as possible with my son. Even when I would leave the state of South Carolina to go to visit DC, there were times when I was up there and she would only allow me to talk to him. And so I don't understand where that comes from, because I can understand if we were never married and we never had a relationship and I was never in my son's life. But from the time he was born, he has my name. I've been there. We shared in the responsibility of raising him. I mean, I spent, to be honest with you, because of her work schedule, when she was working, I spent more time with him during the day and the evening. And I would also prepare his breakfasts and have dinner prepared for her by the time she got home. And then I would go to my 11 o'clock job where I work from 11 to 7. So
let me ask you this. In 2018, did you have Thanksgiving with your son?
2018, no.
2019?
No, sir.
2020?
No, sir.
And all this time, did you think, maybe, can I call the police? Can I file something? What's going on in your mind?
I was a little stupid and naive because she had done this before. She had left before and got herself an apartment around the corner from the house that I had bought for us to be in. And she didn't have a car, so I would take her to work and take my son to school because I didn't want them walking in the street at all. Um, so I thought that she would come around, because we took vows. And I said, I can forgive her if she comes back. She never came back, and she never wanted to. This was, when I think about all of the things that she kept away from me, it was almost like she had it in her mind that she wanted to, leave me for some ulterior motives in terms of, some of the aspects.
So this was the year 2021 was when things was filed with the courts.
Yes,
right? And then the judge gave you a week. There was a lot going back and forth, and you had a week visit with your son, or at least a scheduled week in July.
Yes, sir.
What happened during that week?
Yes, sir. And let me just let you know that the judge originally, when I requested, could you please give me as much time as possible, because it's been 3 years since I've actually had more than 2 or 3 days visiting my son as well as the family. So the judge at that particular point said, okay, Mr. Bolds, I'll give you 2 weeks in July. And she objected to that, stating that she had already had plans for Malachi in terms of extracurricular activities that he was supposed to participate in. So I then said, okay, ma'am, I'll just take the week. I will take the week. I will be in DC. Me and my family will come to get Malachi. And I specifically requested, because my brother's a police officer, I said, please have it so that I can either get my son at the 5th or 6th precinct, because the interactions that I've had with her sister and her cousins have all been very aggressive towards me because of their lifestyles and because of their belief systems. And so I said I didn't want to have anything to do with that. When they're dealing with Malachi, they can deal with Malachi and they can have, but when I come up there to get my son, I don't want to see a mob of people. I don't want to see all of these cousins and whatnot looking at me while I try to get my son. So I figured it would be in the best interest of me and my son to have it in a public area. So she refused to bring him to the 6th precinct or the 5th precinct. And she told me that if I wanted to see him, that I would have to come pick him up from her cousin's house in Southern Maryland, which I did. And when we got there, Brittany and I, she said that I wasn't going to let you see him, but I'm going to let you see him. You need to have him back in 4 hours because he's got to, to a swimming meet tomorrow.
She said in 4.
I said, okay.
She said in 4 hours.
Well, basically 3. But what happened, the reason why I kept my son for 4 hours is because after I took him out to eat, I noticed that the shoes that he had on his feet were a little bit tight. And I said, well, what size are you wearing now? Because I had just sent him a pair of shoes, I think about 4 months before that. He outgrew those. He said he was wearing his cousin's shoes. So I immediately felt the toe and saw that they were, his foot was right there. So we took him and we bought him a pair.
But you were supposed to have them for the week.
Yes, sir. I was supposed to have them for a week.
But what happened?
She called me and she threatened. She said that if I did not return him, that basically she would call the police on me. And I'm not trying to make, me being an individual who has never had a criminal record, my brother's a police officer, I didn't want to have my son in a situation like that where I would have to defend or anything could go wrong at this particular time in the world due to some of the things that happened with African-American males and the police being called. And here I am, a South Carolinian in Maryland or in DC, and I don't actually, know how things would have gone. So I didn't want to put my son or my daughter in a position where I would have to defend them to law enforcement. So I went and brought him back, thinking that I was doing the right thing and being the better person or the more logical, rational parent. And that it just didn't work out that way. Okay. Everything that I tried to do, they seem to they're just very irrational.
So the first day, you were supposed to have them for the week, but you only had them for 4 hours. You brought them back. And did you see them again that week when you were here?
Yes, sir. My daughter called, my aunts called to ask her to allow him to come to be with the family. She did, however, say that I had one more chance to see him and I could drive to Accokeek swimming facility where I could see him at his swimming meet. Well, when we get to the swim meet, once again, there's the whole little village of her people, her friends, and her sister's boyfriend and her cousin's lover and all these other different individuals who for the past 3 years have had an influence on my son, who have manipulated him and intimidated him and alienated me and my family from my biological son that I've raised from the time he was an infant. And so when we got to the pool, Malachi's coach, I introduced myself to his coach and I told his coach, well, I have a slight disability in my leg. And so the coach went and got 2 chairs, one chair for me and one chair for my daughter. My ex-wife had not actually entered into the pool yet, but I did see, I'm not going to say his name. I did see the boyfriend of the sister. So we put our...
wait. So we also have to mention this part. When she took your son and moved to DC, where did she move him to?
Oh my God. Thank you for asking that question. Yes, sir. They were living for approximately 2 years in a 1-bedroom apartment on our street with the sister's boyfriend, my wife, and my son in a 1-bedroom apartment in DC when he had a beautiful, his own room with a gigantic backyard in Charleston, South Carolina. So she took him from the only home that he's ever known to have him stuffed.
Your audio went out. Your audio went out. There you go.
Okay. So yeah, they were living in a 1-bedroom apartment on our street. And most recently, I think it was this year, the sister and the boyfriend actually bought a house. So I don't actually know. I know my son he's not necessarily living in a stable environment. Has not been living in a stable environment.
So let's just put things in perspective. He was living in South Carolina with you and his mother. He would see your daughter, which is his sister, every other weekend. And something happened with his brother and sister on his mother's side. I gathered through the hearing, and mind you all, I came on this hearing at the last hour. Something happened to her daughter. She passed away?
Unfortunately, yes, sir. Her mother knew that she was dating a young man who was a drug dealer and a thug. She knew that. He came to my residence before. He was never welcomed in my home. I did not like him. I did not appreciate him. I did like the young man that she dated before, but I did not like this particular guy. And to be honest with you, my wife left me. She left me in August of 2018. Okay. Her daughter continued to stay in South Carolina, spent New Year's with me and my daughter eating Hoppin' John's, fried chicken, and collard greens that I cooked because she loved my food. That's what I do. And so for over 6 months, she took my son, took our son, left her daughter here. And her daughter wasn't living in my home. She was actually living with the young man, but she would always come back, to see me or to get money. I never knew, I swear, I never knew until the funeral that he was abusive to her. But my wife did know that because she participated. She went out to parties with her. She went out to family picnics at this guy's house.
How did she pass?
He shot her in her stomach at Citadel Mall. And the police came to my house and told me and notified me looking for her. And they also had me to identify the body. And I did everything.
All this happened while your wife, the mother, was in DC with your son.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm hoping everyone is getting a picture of what we're saying here. We're painting a picture. We have a man and a wife. They have a blended family. The wife takes it upon herself to take the son to DC into a 1-bedroom apartment with her sister and her boyfriend, and leaves the daughter in DC, in South Carolina with her husband. Now the son, he came as a witness, and his testimony was, I wasn't allowed in their house. Mr. Bolds wouldn't allow me to be in the house. Now I questioned him thoroughly, and the judge asked me to take it a little easy, but he wasn't saying things that was clear at all. But what came out of that was the mother left the son or sent the son back to DC, or it wasn't that Mr. Bolds was keeping him out. The son just didn't want to be there. And then Mr. Bolds testified that it was because of the work that he was making him do around the house. So we're back at the swim meet now, and you're there with your daughter, you and Brittany. And I wish everyone could have seen Brittany at the hearing, but what happens there at the swim meet?
Okay, so at the swim meet, as I'm rooting for my son, and as Brittany's over there rooting for her brother, and we're interacting as much as possible, and you know, my ex-wife was there with her family and her side. I had already had a few words with her boyfriend, because he's just always there intervening. And this man said to me, this is what this man said to me. This man said, I'm smarter than you. I got more money than you. And you have not been in your son's life for 3 years. This is what this man told me. Okay. And mind you, this man is about 6'5". He's about 360 pounds, ex-football player. And this is what I have to deal with when I try to come see my son. This is what this man said to me. So naturally, you know, I'm a very passionate individual. You know, my parents, they raised me. I come from, you know, a very strong-willed family. So we had a few words. It didn't get rude or disrespectful, but I just let him know that this is my son. I'm going to be in his life until God takes me off of this earth. And there's nothing that you or anybody else can do. My love for my son is unconditional. There's nothing that he can do that's going to keep me from loving him. And there's nothing that you can do that's going to stop me from loving my son. What you should do is sit back and enjoy and allow me to be in my son's life. So as he participated in it, he got first place in the freestyle swim, and he got first place in the backstroke, which I'm very happy. I'm very happy. We're happy. And so we decided to go ahead and leave. And we went to this little gazebo, and my daughter brought Malachi a hamburger, and we're hugging and saying our goodbyes. And Brittany called my mother so that Malachi could speak with his grandmother on the phone. Well, at that time, one of the other family members was swimming, and they said, come on, Malachi, come on. So-and-so is about to swim. I don't want to call the young lady's name. So-and-so, and she's a sweet young lady. She's about the only person in the family that does have a good spirit that I've seen. She's very respectful, never been disrespectful, and I like her. So they said, come on, she's about to swim. And so I put my hand up like this right here saying, okay, we're saying our goodbyes to Malachi. Malachi can always see her swim, but we're only here for this one particular time, and we're still saying goodbye. Well, my ex comes and grabs my son, pulls him by the arm. He drops his water and everything. You can see in his face, like, I'm trying to say goodbye to my daddy and my sister, and they didn't care. And so we went on ahead, took a few more pictures, and we left the facility. We left out of the facility. We're hitting about 100 yards of football field from where the actual swimming pool was. By the time we got to the vehicle, here comes this big guy. Here comes her 20-year-old son. He's taking off his clothes and calling me every name that he can think of, a B, a N. And so my daughter, Brittany, you know, she was like a lioness. She's like, don't you talk to my father that way? Don't you do this? And so I immediately had to kind of move her out of the way, because he was posturing as if he was getting ready to run up on me and do whatever he needed to do.
And
but
his shirt was off, right?
Yes, so he had his shirt off, pants hanging off his backside. But I had my hands like this because they were videotaping. We weren't videotaping, but they were videotaping the entire situation of them coming to us. So I said, well, if this young man's going to hit me, then let him go ahead and hit me. That'll be fine. But he's not going to hit my daughter. Oh, that's a picture of Brittany and Malachi right there. Oh, Lord, have mercy.
So these people are trying to fight you in a parking lot.
Yes, sir.
They have their shirt off
Yes, sir.
and they're trying to fight you.
Yes, sir.
Wow. So I'm going to let Dr. Cheney ask some questions before we wrap up.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bolds,
Yes,
how are
ma'am.
you?
I'm fine, ma'am. How you doing?
Hanging in there, you have a compelling story.
Yes, ma'am.
But I hear a lot about you, of course. Can you share with us about your wife? Who is she? When did you meet her? The child is 9 years old. Did you meet in college in Washington? In the sense that she was in Washington in college or something, and you came to visit her?
No, ma'am. Actually, and I thank God that I have my son. I met her when I was working for the city of Hyattsville. She was a secretary. So when I walked into the building, she was the very first person that I saw. And this was my very first time being in DC, being in the big city, and I didn't know anybody. And when I saw her, I was actually measuring. I thought she was a very, very beautiful woman. I think DC has some of the most beautiful women in the world. But I was taken back, and she was pretty much irresistible to me. And I began to pursue her, and everything was fine. But when we gelled and we got together, it was like there were some father issues that she had that I never really quite knew. Her older brother had explained some things to me, and I had a great deal of respect for him. But there were some issues that she had, and as we began to talk about some of her relationships and things, there were just some baggages, some brokenness that she brought with her, as most people do. That's common. But when I married her, that didn't matter. Her past did not matter. It was all about our future and what we were going to be doing moving forward with our family. So that didn't matter. I have a past as well.
And this is
But
her right here, right?
yeah, that's her, right? That's her. That's her. So yeah, I never imagined that she would leave me or that our love wouldn't last. And I figured that if we're truly Christians and we're believing in the word and we govern ourselves by that, there's nothing that we cannot get through. But when you have people in your circle that are bringing you a different type of energy, and they are individuals who don't reinforce the right culture, then this is how the devil can destroy families and destroy marriages. I never put my hand on my wife. I never put my hand on my son. I've never put my hand on anybody. I am a very passionate person. God made me who I am. Okay. John the Baptist was radical. So I don't apologize for being who I am or who God has made me be. I think that it behooves individuals who are around me to allow me to be me, because that's what God wants. He wants you to be who you are. He wants the doctors and the panels that you have, the people on your panels, to be who they are, and they're all unique. So why should we try to change people if they don't have a negative energy? And so there's a perception of me from certain individuals, and I think that was what ultimately led to
What happened?
different culture in the marriage.
Dr. Cheney, what did that answer your question?
Yes, I have a few more.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Most of them have been answered. Were there any ignored signs that the mother would disappear with your son? Were
Oh
there
Lord.
signs that, but then again, you say this, it's not routine that she disappeared, but there's a history there that she's disappeared, well, that she's left before. And so were there signs and you just kind of ignored them and said, we can work it out?
Yeah, I am a hopeless romantic, so to speak, and I
Oh, yeah.
love her. And she's got a few years on me. And when I married her, I was like, listen, I'm 33 years old. I don't want to be out here fornicating anymore. I love you. You're smart. You're intelligent. You cook good. You're funny. You got all these attributes that I like, that I love. But like I said, if you aren't evenly yoked, that's the term that the old people use. sometimes and you don't stay prayed up, the devil has a way of sneaking in there. And so there were some signs, some things, yes, ma'am, to answer your question. There were some things that I ignored, but me being the individual that I am, I figured that, if I accept her for who she is and love her for who she is, then eventually, we can work through these things. But there's some culture differences. I mean, it's just culture differences. And when you look, and I'm not trying to talk negatively about her family, but when you deal with women who ultimately do not feel the need to have a man or to have that father presence in the child's life, and they are committed and they feel convicted that they can raise a family without a man, this is what happened. But I believe, and I'm not trying to be facetious or anything, I believe God made a man and a woman, and they all have attributes together that create a nurturing environment for family and for children. And if we know our roles and we respect our roles and we allow people to be who they are, then everything will work out just fine. But the foundation had already been set. I did everything humanly possible to love my wife, to love her family, and to have this thing grow. But I think that sometimes in order for me to grow, in order for me to focus and do what it is that God put me on earth to do, some of that energy that was around me had to leave because maybe I was focusing too much on my love for her and not my love for the true purpose of why I'm here.
Did that answer your question, Dr. Cheney?
Yes, and the last part that I'd like to ask Mr. Bowles. You talk about culture, and we use that in an interesting way. Tell me what you think her culture is. I get your culture, but what do you think some of the cultural attributes that she has that are very different from your culture attributes?
Yes, man. Well, for one thing, I don't, as much as possible, I try not to conform to the world. I try not to conform to the social norms and the things that people normally do. I don't believe in tattoos. Um, I do still shop at thrift stores. My aunts and whatnot remind me to do that. I look for clearance. When I do go shop, I look for clearance. I teach my children the fundamentals. And I believe that the world that we're living in now, um, you know, it's changing and the roles are changing. Like when I came up, there was only two genders, male or female. Now there are multi-genders, and there's a there in my opinion, in my humble opinion, there is some type of culture in this country to destroy black families and to emasculate black men. I hope I don't sound crazy, but why should a woman think like a man and act like a woman when God created them to be feminine? Why should a man?
And that actually came up in the hearing because one of her witnesses was, tell us about the witness.
Well, yes, sir. These women are very, very smart, very, very intelligent, and very, very manipulative. They befriended me. They would come to my home for barbecues, but all the time they were plotting on how they were going to abandon me and desert me and take my son.
Well, talk about the one who she accused you of. How did she put it? You didn't approve of her lifestyle, and
Yes.
she was trying to make it seem as though you have this way. What's her lifestyle?
Right. Yes, sir. So this particular lady is she's had 3 children with one of her cousins, and I know her, but it's the spirit about her and the spirit of the people around her. I just don't agree with it. I have homosexuals in my family. My cousin is one, and I love him. You know what I'm saying? He's my cousin. He's my blood, but he's the type of person you're going to know what he's about, who he's about, and he's not going to do anything, in my opinion, that would be disrespectful in that lifestyle. People have the right. But what I said, I'll have to say this. I'm not homophobic any more than I am pro-heterosexual. God made me a man, and I'm very, very proud to be a man. From a scientific perspective, I think I explained to her that, and I'm not trying to be facetious, but people have a choice. But from a scientific perspective, my anus is designed to bow. And so an individual who could go against science, because if God didn't intend for me to be a man, he would have made asexual reproduction for women. But because there's an uterus and there are fallopian tubes and there is a penis, this is how God wants human beings to reproduce.
So,
And so that foundation.
suffice to say, the young lady was homosexual and she tried to accuse you. She tried to say that you didn't approve of her lifestyle, which really didn't fit into what we're talking about.
Yes,
but
sir.
with to Dr. Cheney's question about the culture, she has a culture that's far different than yours.
Yes.
Suffice to say.
They live a homosexual drag queen type lifestyle, and that's okay, but why should that influence be a major influence in my son's life when he's an adolescent? Why should he spend, when he's not with his mother and he can't be with my family, why is it that he's going to go to a house where there are two females, one of them is supposed to be the husband and the other one's supposed to be the woman, and then there are an array of other young individuals who have different genders, opinions? Why should my son be in that type of environment?
Right.
Why? What gives them the right to perpetuate that upon him? And he's innocent, he's young. He should be around his father, teaching him, and other males, his uncles, teaching him how to be a man, teaching him how to be a male. And so it hurts me, sir. I mean, it deeply, it really hurts me, man, that this woman, oh God, that they would do that.
Yeah. Your volume went out again. Your mic went out again. Your mic is out. Your mic is out. Your mic is out.
Women are being sold as sex slaves across the country, and you take my son from a good home and put him in Sodom and Gomorrah?
Okay, so we got it. We got it. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I know you're passionate. Dr. Cheney, was that it?
Yeah, the last thing I want to ask, based on that, when did you know that the cultures were this different? Long ago?
Oh, well, I did know that the culture was different, but I didn't know that there was like a marriage or a fiance type thing going on. I thought it was more like, okay, well, she's experimenting with this lifestyle, and maybe she may get back with the individual who she had her children with, but that's not, I don't have the right to judge them in their like that. They have to go before God with that. So I accepted them for who they were. Like I said, I got a first cousin who's gay. He's always been gay. That's not gonna stop me from loving him, but I don't want that influence to be a major influence in my children's life.
And I guess the answer is he didn't know the extent of the difference in culture is what I gather. So we're about to wrap this up. What I want to say is the hearing was a hearing that was one that I've probably never seen like this before as far as family matters. Mr. Bolds had his brother, who was an officer, and he was there in his uniform. He had his aunt, he had his mother, he had his daughter. Who else was there? I think that was it. But they presented a picture of a strong family net who all were working together to raise this young man. And then now the young man is gone. And I'm sure that there's other people out there listening whose child is just gone. But what was interesting, and I'm sure Mr. Bolds would appreciate this, talking about the Bible, there's a man named Job who, as the story goes, Satan, who his name Hasatan in the original language, which means the accuser of the brethren, he came to accuse Job, but there was nothing he could accuse him of. Job was an upright man. So he says, well, the only reason why he's this good is because you bless him, yada, yada, yada. At this hearing, his ex-wife had a list, a group of people who came to testify. They were his Hasatan. They came to accuse him. And not one of them could have accused him of being a bad father. It was amazing. I sat there and I just was taking notes. Oh, he's done this. He was verbally abusive to the wife, and we knocked that out of the water. but not one could accuse Mr. Bolds of saying he's not a good father. This was a custody hearing. She was trying to get custody after kidnapping the child, but she couldn't, her or none of her witnesses could testify to Mr. Bolds being a bad father. Now, I don't know how this judge is going to rule. I gather that the judge, I think she's new to family court. It would be the biggest injustice for her to come back and say, no, the kid gets to stay with the mother, knowing what we presented to her on Thursday. So I'll just say this, and John, I'm letting you know, letting the world know, Dr. Cheney, I'm letting you know, Mr. Bolds, appeals usually start at $10,000. But if this judge comes back with anything that you're not satisfied with, we'll take the appeal free of charge. I'm putting it out there. It's on the waves. I can't go back on it. That's how much I believe in this case, and I believe in you. All right, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on today. We're fighting for you. We're praying for you. And we know that justice is going to see itself through in the end of this.
Indeed.
Thank you.
We're going to let you go now. Thanks for coming on. Tell your family we said hello.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bolds.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, John.
The part of me that wants to say I got nothing. I mean, after all that, what is there to say? You know, just to get into a conversation about where's the injustice, and so where isn't the injustice? Yeah, he's a little naive, but I guess we've all been around the block a few more times. I mean, the fact that, again, it's taken 3 years to end up in court, that's a shame. This should have been in court a long time ago. But, you know, I get it. He thinks somehow it's going to work out. And for his sake, I wish it had.
But the law on this, John, is clear.
Oh, absolutely clear.
The mother committed an intra-family, and by the way, parental kidnapping is called an intra-family offense. And as soon as you do that, the presumption is there's only one parent now standing. But the fact that we now have to go through
the judge didn't rule from the bench.
Right.
You know, it's like, what's there to say? The mother is conceding to the offense. I mean, right? That's what you're saying has happened in the hearing. Well, okay, we're done here. Whatever other extenuating circumstances, that is the most important thing. And there may be some nibbling around the edges about anything else you might have to say, but now that's where we're starting from. You've committed a crime. You've committed a family crime against your son and your husband, because I guess they're still not divorced.
That's a good point. They're not yet.
Which I don't quite get that, but maybe that's just because I've been doing this law thing so long. Look, you left, you're not coming back. Why are you still married to this man?
Right. So the divorce is being held in South Carolina in a different suit. The custody case, because they're in DC with the child, is being held in DC.
I get that, but why wasn't, like him, you know, why wasn't this divorce filed years ago? You knew you weren't coming back.
Right.
Now maybe
it could be because she could be part of that culture who, look, right as you said, out of sight, out of mind. You know, I'll wait till I meet another guy, and then if he pushes me, oh yeah, I am married. Let me go get divorced really quick. Maybe it's 5 years down the road. Maybe it's 10 years. Maybe that's what she was thinking. I don't know. But she seems to be very self-centered. To be able to take your child away from the father put him in a 1-bedroom apartment with 4 people. Dr. Cheney, how did that strike you?
It was alarming with me.
Because you come from a big family, Dr. Cheney. Let's get in your business.
Well, I grew up with a brother and my grandparents. I didn't grow up with my other siblings.
Oh, okay.
But DC is a different town. I was listening to him, and I thought about when I came to DC. It's a fast town based on where I came from. Middleburg was slow, and this is really fast. And because of my upbringing, I'm not anti-Washingtonians because I have siblings that are Washingtonians. But the way they were reared is the old school way, similar to what Mr. Bond was talking about. And this is a fast town. I'm sure New York is fast also, but it's faster than I wanted to ever be involved with. So I'm not going to say it's rare that I have DC friends, but I don't know. I guess, it all depends, but it's a sad situation.
It is.
Yeah.
So
And
if the judge comes back and says, no, the son belongs with the mother, because this is where it gets dicey. The son has been with her for the last 3 years. So the judge could view it and say, well, sending him back home with the father would be such another shock, another huge change. Let's just keep the son with the mother, despite the fact that she kidnapped him. Despite the fact that she did all of this, it would be in the best interest of the son, maybe, to be with
you really have to push that issue. I mean, I want to see the evidence that this is in the best interest of that child. Yeah, there's that presumption. You don't want to mess with the child, blah, blah, blah. There's been so much messing going on in the last year anyway. And COVID and all the way that kind of disruption has upended people's lives, that to say simply because he's been in that environment in and of itself, that would be an injustice right there. I mean, you'd have to really put some cards on the table to justify why that is in this child's best interest, given the kidnapping, given what at least I'm reading between the lines of what you were saying, Solon. The judge ordered a week with the father. He got essentially nothing.
Right.
I mean, that would be such a red flag. I mean, I would think as a judge, you want to mess with him, that's one thing, but you're now messing with me. Judge Judy, the whole eyebrow thing going up, like you're right. You complained about 2 weeks, he accepted a week, and you messed with that after I ordered that? Oh, no. We ain't even going with this.
Right.
So
you would think, but again, and this is why I say it's not so much the system, it's the people we put in place to run the system. The judge didn't seem fazed that she was in contempt. I actually filed a motion for contempt that she never ruled on. The judge was asking questions about his financials, which led me to believe that she's about to give this woman custody and make him pay child support. That's why I said we have to gear ourselves up, because this very well may be an appeal case, because we'll have to fight the injustice of what's right for this family.
it's a mess. That would be a travesty outcome.
I think the one lesson everyone should learn is if it's been 2 days, unfortunately, Mr. Bolds waited almost 3 years, 2 days, and your spouse, the other parent, has taken the child away, start to act right then.
Oh, yeah. And it doesn't matter, like, not every jurisdiction may have a law like DC's kidnapping statute. But I think that is still good advice. Wherever you live, whatever, because again, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I live in New York or Pennsylvania or Arkansas. Oh, yeah, I know, child kidnapping laws. What parent is going to know that? But just the idea, 48 hours, that's it. Because either you end up in his situation or you end up in some of the situations of some of the other people we've had on the show.
Exactly.
It's like, I'm desperate to get my kid back. I'm desperate to get my kid back. And now you do exactly the stuff that you get beaten up for.
Right.
So even though you're the victim in this scenario, you kind of get a little bit out of your head, and now you start sending aggressive texts and you're making all these phone calls, and now it all gets used against you, and everybody's ignoring the fact that your child has been stolen away.
Right.
I think the other thing too that we don't talk a lot about is it's kind of like a backdrop to all this stuff is the violence part that Mr. Bonds talks about. What is he going to do to protect himself if he has to?
Yeah. Well, we'll ask for drop off to be at a place where her family can't beat him up, because that's what they were trying to do this time. We could ask for a restraining order. We could put things in place. His brother is a police officer, but they don't care. I mean,
the other issue that again, wasn't there and how the judge handled all this, but he asked for a neutral location and she didn't want to do that. And the judge just wasn't that part of the order? Here's how much time you get. Here's how you're going to do it. You pick them up here, you bring them back there. Where did all that go?
yeah.
It seems like the judge is either ceding everything to whatever this lady wants, or if it's been written down, again, it's all being violated and the court is not standing up for itself at that point. I didn't get that.
What do you think would happen if everything that she did in this case, he did?
That's it. He'd be done.
Lost custody, might even be in jail.
There would certainly be a stay away order in place. There'd be this, there'd be that. Again, we have clients, right? Who are not exactly in his shoes, but boy, there are enough analogies about all the things that are being done to the non-custodial parent who's lost a child because somebody decided, oh, I'm just taking them. And I can do that because that's what I want to do.
We need judges to step up. If there's any judges watching this show, you have to step up. I'm going to just say it. You have to be gender blind. You have to treat male and female equally. The rest of the population shouldn't look in on a case and say, oh, well, that's unfair. The law is fair. The law says that if a parent kidnaps a child, you lose custody. It should happen in this case. We'll be back and see what happens. Go ahead.
Well, but as you noted, there's not a single accusation really against him.
Right.
Of any, maybe they got up in court and said he's a homophobe. Let's go with that. Let's just assume that's what happened. But even if we take that as having been said, nothing has been put on the scales against him as a parent, as what, he hasn't done anything abusive. He spanked this kid years ago for a particular reason. And even that was not apparently off the chain or anything like that. So you've got nothing.
Nothing.
Job, your Jobian analogy there.
Yeah. And what's funny, when she tried, and we'll close with this, when she kept saying, oh, he's been verbally abusive, that's something that I've noticed that a lot of spouses would use, men and women, when they don't really have anything. Not saying it doesn't happen. So she was making the accusation. He's been verbally abusive over the course of the marriage. So I asked her when I got a chance to cross-examine, and I said, do you ever get angry with your child? Yes. Do you ever spank him? Oh, no. Do you ever get angry with your husband? Yes. Do you ever yell at your husband? Well, yeah. Do you ever curse at him? Sometimes. Do you ever call him names? Sometimes. Are these things that he would do you that you're saying that he verbally abused you with? Yes. So he basically verbally abused you and you verbally abused him. It's the same thing. With spouses,
had a fight.
they're angry. So I don't think the judge put any weight on this verbally abusive man. I mean, you saw him, he is passionate, but he's not the kind of guy who's gonna berate and belittle and tell his wife or children anything to break them emotionally or spiritually. Dr. Cheney, I'm gonna let you have the last word.
Two different cultures. And it's not necessarily the size of a family, it's the quality of the interaction within the family. And it's unfortunate.
Yes.
Hopefully he will, or they will get it together.
One day, we know what we need to do. We need to have a cultural relationship show. We could throw the law in it, but because so many of our cases are, I think that's what you said, Dr. Cheney, comes to different cultures. But what can you do to prevent that?
Well, ideally, you would have his culture, her culture, and then there's something called a third culture that basically both of you contribute to that particular entity. And with that, you respect each other. You respect the differences. It's not that easy, but it seems to me in relationships, it would be great if we had some kind of magic wand and we could figure out the people that we're dealing with. And sometimes that isn't available.
That's true. Thank you all for being such an influential part of this show. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe, the red button on the bottom. Continue to send your messages in, and we will see you next time.
That's right. More justice coming.
More justice.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching our video. For experienced legal services in Washington, D.C., Alabama, and Washington State, visit our website at remuslaw.com or call us at 1-833-329-1799.
When someone goes through a divorce, they lose their best friend. They lose their house. They lose their children. Any time away from your child is a loss. Let's face it, divorce kills. The average cost in the United States for a divorce is $13,000. It's not uncommon for a divorce to cost well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. At Remus, we take into consideration you, the divorcing spouse, your property, your money, and your children. We assist clients in directing them to therapy, mentorship programs, savings. We mitigate the cost of divorce to keep your expenses down. We look out for the client holistically.
I came to Remus Law seeking a divorce. Solon listened to me. I told him my story. When he mailed me a copy of the complaint, which summarized my story, he was able to say exactly what I had been feeling for so many years. When my husband was served with the complaint, he came to me with tears in his eyes. He said he didn't know this is how I was really feeling. He asked if we could try again.
At Remus, we do all that we can for our clients.